Essentially, I think the message is clear in terms of the changing global environment and the implication on that on governments, because you can no longer outsource your problems or feel that some big brother somewhere will take care of you. You have to find the solutions yourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So thank you for the midweek highlights, Brenna and Charles. We are now just going to, before we kick off the show, because I think this is going to be a meaty show, so we'd like to hear very quickly from some of the viewers. So we're going to start with a couple of tweets based on this topic for today. And we have the first tweet coming in from a lady called Fiona. Fiona Mukashema says that this is one of the topics I've been waiting with the Square. I hope to tune in. But I'd say that education needs a right solution that hits to the right issue. If it is yes for schools to reopen, let it be. If it is no, then let there be accessible platforms for all. Before we go to the next tweet, I hope our guests are factoring in these comments from our social media feed. The next tweet we have is from Jacques. Jacques Favor states that, interesting topic indeed. I wish primary educational institutions would conduct surveys online if applicable, looking for the challenges being faced by students and parents in education throughout this pandemic. This feedback may reveal loopholes and solutions. Interesting to see if, and we'll hear from the DG of Rwanda Education Board whether this has been done or not. Then we also have a tweet coming in from Nshuti Mbabazi, who says that classrooms are too crowded and we've seen what that brings in numbers of children who get the common cold and the like. With digitals in every school, we can change that. Have the one laptop per child computers, have they been put to use during this time, or are they still collecting dust in school storage? That's a question from Shuti Mbabazi. And the last tweet before we kick off this conversation is from Esther, who states that there should be strategies, online platforms in place in case this goes on for the 5-6 months otherwise. So this is what we are here to listen to today. And the first question, obviously, we'll start with hearing from a government perspective. And this is going to go to you, Dr. Irene. And we know that when schools closed in March this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Rwanda Education Board doubled down swiftly, if I may add, on how it would build the capacity of its existing e-learning platforms, amongst other strategies, because we know that, the impact on schools was going to be really felt in the coming months. So if you could just start by giving us a brief overview of Rwanda Education Board. What strategies have been put in place to ensure that learning is ongoing, specifically for primary and secondary schools across the country, that are to do with distance learning or remote learning, if you will, just to kick off the conversation?
Thank you so much. In actual fact, as many Rwandans can recall, by mid-March when we were notified that the first case of COVID-19 was notified here in Rwanda, different measures were taken, among which the Ministry of Education actually informed day scholars to remain in their homes while those in boarding schools were evacuated as one of the way to mitigate the spread of COVID. So when kids actually were evacuated, the first challenge that we had was how can we make sure that the learning continues even if children are not in the schools. So we actually embarked on what we are calling a remote learning, the way we are calling it, and remote learning came into phases. So the very first step we had was to reboot or to empower our e-learning platform, which initially did not have enough capacity because prior the lockdown, actually we did not have many users being connected to the platform at once. But though we even increased its capacity, there was a challenge because not every child has his own laptop, but even for those who had a laptop, the issue of data bundles was really not something which was easy. We could hear from parents saying that they are lending their laptops to the kids, then in a few hours, the bundles are over. So what is going to happen next? And maybe you can imagine the house when maybe you have like 2 or 3 children who want to use the e-learning platform. That is where actually we say that increasing the capacity of our e-learning platform was not enough. we went ahead as REB and the Ministry of Education. We approached the telecommunication companies that we are really thankful till now, MTN and Airtel, and the access to our learning platform became zero-rated. So meaning that you can access it 7 days, 24 hours free of charge since mid-March to date. So that is a very big support. But also, much as we are saying that the learning platform has been there, we had to make sure that for every subject, we appoint somebody we are calling a mentor. Somebody who is going to assist the kids to respond to their inquiries online, so that they actually students keep the live experience they have had with the teacher in the class, but having that experience remotely. So for every subject that we are delivering through our learning platform, there is a tutor, there is a mentor who is assisting the students. But we say that even beyond the e-learning platform, because not every child lives in a family where there is a laptop, not every child lives in a family where there is a smartphone. We said which other medium can help to reach out to many kids. We thought of using a radio. That is why on the 4th of April, we aired the first radio lesson, which actually gave us a little bit of feedback. People appreciated this, but again, every radio station has its own audience. People said, yeah, we are using Radio Rwanda, but my radio, for instance, is KT Radio, or it is Radio 10. How do you reach us? For us, whose radio, our own station is this one. So how do you imagine that we have to switch to Radio Rwanda, and yet we have other programs that they follow on this particular radio station? So we approached a private radio station that really also deserve a big thank for having supported Rwanda education efforts. So we widen actually the scope of Radio Rwanda to reach out to other what we can call affiliated radios to the Radio Rwanda, community radios like the ones in Nyagatare, the one in Rubavu, the one in Musanze and Huye and so forth. So beyond this community radio, we introduced also airing lesson on radios, but also later on, we were challenged because we had a number of lessons like mathematics, chemistry, and physics that could not be aired using radio. So for this, we had to think about a medium which is using both media like audio and video. That's why we switched again on TV. When we switched to TV again, we had another challenge, like students, especially with hearing impairments, who said, well, you have introduced this, it is a good initiative, but again, we need some sign language interpreters. So with this undertake again, we realized that we widened the scope, we could actually reach out every child. But again, we said, much as we are teaching, much as we are delivering learning, how do we make sure that the learning is taking place? So we said, let us come up with a kind of assessment scenario, which is now mobile-based. It is a mobile application, 134, star 134 hash, actually the hashtag that we are used to on Twitter, which is again zero-rated. So a child can, after the AR lessons or any other lesson that you have which is aligned to a curriculum, enter using any mobile application. Sorry, any type of mobile, be it a smart or the one that we call in Rwanda, the Gatoroshi one. So using that one again, you enter in your class, you select the subject, and there is a wide range of questions that you are going to be guiding through the material. And as you attempt this question again, the system is going to mark you. For instance, if you score like 2 over 10, the system is going to tell you, you better go back and revise. But when you score beyond like 5 over 10, the system is going to say, well, you are doing a very good job. Then you can move to other set questions. I would say that it has been a journey. We have learned as we implement, but much as we are doing this, we really urge that parents continue supporting our efforts, because parents are the ones now playing the role of teachers, because they are the ones who know what is happening in the house. They are the ones actually to tell the kids to be connected by the time their respective classes are being conducted, and ensuring that they attempt the exercise being left to the teacher. Briefly, it has been a learning journey, but at least we managed to show that we have to go beyond the physical classroom boundary in as far as education is concerned.
Absolutely. Wow, listening to that, you know, the way you just kept on talking about the challenge you kept on meeting over, you know, along the way and dealing with those challenges. And I'm sure there are many more to come as we switch from a totally new way of learning. Just briefly before we hear from the resident panelists and also hear from our guest, Olivier, if you can tell us, Dr. Hine, can you share some light on the sort of institutional coordination you have, whether it's the Ministry of Education or Rwanda Education Board, the sort of institutional coordination you have with other stakeholders to really ensure that no child is left behind, especially, as you said earlier on, children with disabilities as well as girls. Just give us a picture of the sort of partnerships that you have to implement, you know, as effectively as possible remote education for primary and secondary schools across the country.
Yeah, thank you so much. In actual fact, we cannot sit and please ourselves saying that we achieved all of this by ourselves. We have to acknowledge a number of development partners that supported this journey. You know, even the exercise of shooting these lessons, it requires a huge investment. And but also, apart from this, you know, we had to reach out, especially those families who do not have even a post radio. You have been seeing the Rwanda Education Board and its development partners distributing radios aimed at being given to the kids for whose families cannot even afford now to buy a simple radio. So in actual fact, a number of partners managed to provide solar panel radios, because again, we thought of other types of radios, but we could see these families do not even have electricity. So how do you provide a radio that is going to compel a family to be having electricity? So we said we better switch to solar radios. These ones have been distributed in a number of districts, and the journey continues. But even beyond this, we have a number of kids, especially those with visual impairments. We had actually to produce what we can call handbooks, and these handbooks were given to P2, P3, P4, P5, and P6 kids for the three main subjects, Kinyarwanda, mathematics, and the English. So we could not really print this in Braille if we did not have the support of development partners. So beyond the development partners that I mentioned also the telecommunication companies and the other players who have in one way or another given feedback saying what you are doing is good, but you better improve in this way or the other. And we are taking also this opportunity again to thank media, because what we see in media is not a criticism to us. For us, we see the feedback from media as a constructive feedback based on which we have been improving our services.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hine. Brenna, Charles, would you like to weigh in? Charlie?
Well, I think, first of all, just to take it from the last point that you raised in terms of the feedback and the way they take the feedback, I think that's the right approach. No one ever anticipated that COVID would be here and the impact it has had. It is a very big problem for everybody, and education was always going to suffer. I think, you know, even though everyone is crying about hospitality and tourism-related businesses, that's predominantly, I think, because if you look at the immediate impact on the economy and the immediate impact it has on borrowings, the value chain of the tourism sector would probably be, you know, would feel it real bad. But so again, really kudos to whatever they've done at REB and the Ministry of Education and all these stakeholders. I picked two or three things. I mean, he did speak about physically challenged kids, and it brings me to an issue of TVET. You know, the government of Rwanda has gone very aggressively on TVET, and I'd be wondering, these people who really needed practical skills to advance, and, you know, gone are the days when TVET would begin after you finished your secondary school. It's part and parcel of your your 12-year education cycle. So I would be curious to know what that is. That is really from a curiosity perspective. The other one that is a very unfortunate thing to say is that with or without COVID, you would naturally see that the parents who have better access to give their children better education, better access, would naturally find their children progressing faster or better.
Of course.
Yeah, and it's quite unfortunate that even when you look at the different online platforms that are there, the ones in private schools tend to be more, a lot better than the ones in public schools. And
it's the digital divide, just becoming wider.
Yes.
Or exacerbated by this pandemic. It is most unfortunate. Brenna?
I feel that under the circumstances, if you look at how quickly the Ministry of Education has been able to reorient and adjust, I think they've done quite well because it's a pandemic, budgets are under pressure, and not just public, private, family budgets are under pressure. And you need quite a bit of money to be able to do these things. But so far we've seen that it didn't take them so much time to at least try and do something. Now it remains work in progress. But I feel that there's room to bridge the gap because it's very clear in terms of the disparity. Kids from well-to-do families definitely are ahead. These are kids that were already familiar with digital gadgets. Parents are literate, but when you go back to vulnerable homes, most of the parents are probably illiterate. They have no sense of the digital world. You may say the radio, but they may not even understand what is going on the radio. So I think there's room to do more in terms of bridging that gap. And I feel that what is being done around healthcare, where you have home-based care now that is being rolled out, they could try to do the same for education, where you have some maybe volunteers, or because these teachers that were teaching are still probably in the neighborhood. So if it's an issue of numbers, you have to find a way to at least, maybe if you can identify 10 homes where the parents are illiterate, or how can you arrange something that at least creates an experience and maybe orients these parents to help their children? Because it's quite difficult.
But are you saying this within like a physical context?
Yes.
Obviously not
yes.
online or on radio.
Yes.
How would that work based on the the guidelines that we're being told by?
I think it's possible. It's possible because we know for sure that human contact will have to happen. Yeah. But you have to respect the social distancing rules. Yeah. So where you would have overcrowded classrooms, for instance, think about an environment where you have 15, in a small village, 15 and maybe one. The logistics are not quite straightforward, but it's an idea that I'm throwing out there.
Absolutely, I hear you.
You could think about making those small arrangements, like we've seen. Conferences now beginning to happen, people having workshops, there are restrictions on numbers, but at least it's happening. Because for me, I feel that for vulnerable homes, it's difficult to imagine that in a home where the parents are casual laborers, for instance, they depend on day-to-day jobs, that they will dedicate time to help their children. It's quite difficult. So it's a delicate balance, but I think it's needed because if children are going to stay out of school for quite some time, we have to think about the cost of that.
Absolutely.
We know already, I mean, studies are being done, and we're seeing that there's a huge risk that many children may drop out of school, actually, the longer it takes to open the schools. So how you address that, I think is important.
Absolutely.
Let's not just feel that technology resolves everything right now. I don't think so.
I agree on that, sort of thinking out of the box, lateral thinking. Yes, schools are going to remain closed, but can we also find a way of still somehow balancing it out, still respecting the particular guidelines we're being given on how to handle this pandemic? We'll hear more from our viewers based on the insights and the comments from the resident panelists. I'd like to now go to Mr. Olivier. Olivier, we are here and we want to talk about sort of made in Rwanda solutions to address this particular issue. The education sector has really taken a hit, and there are lots of e-learning or remote learning, distance learning strategies that are coming in place. The DG, Director General of Rwanda Education Board, just mentioned a couple in terms of what government is doing. Now, going to the private sector or going to the entrepreneurs in this country when it comes to ICT, what can you tell us about your company, specifically the app, the online platform called Homeschool Rwanda? We know it's an app designed to connect parents, teachers, and students. Just briefly tell us more about Homeschool Rwanda.
Yes, developing this application, Homeschool, thank you so much for giving me your time. Developing this application of Homeschool Rwanda, we were just as a support to the government. When the COVID started, we were providing the solution to schools for them to connect with the parents, whereby they provided service, including the online learning, payments, and so on. So we decided to create something that, because some of the schools were closing and they couldn't even be paying their teachers, so we said, how can we then help the kids that are closing so that they can have access to the teachers who were teaching them through the online or from other schools, even from abroad. So we created a platform called Homeschool to connect the parents who want to register their kids online and provide some small amount so that we can even support the teachers who are no longer getting the salaries from their schools. Then we implemented a platform called Homeschool, which parent registers their kids, and then those kids, they choose the classes they wanted the kids to learn from online, and then we connect them with the teachers who have subscribed online to provide the lessons. We have reviewers who review the CVs of the teachers, and then they choose who is going to start teaching the kids. So one of the initiative that we got is just to say, like, for example, if I'm a teacher and I'm teaching around 100 people in a classroom, we cannot, some students will not be able to understand the subject really well. Then we decided to say we are going to create a maximum of 20 kids in a class, whereby they'll be able to be supported by the teacher. And then we classify those students depending on which hours do they want to even to study, because some students will find their parents go with their phones, so they cannot access the internet, because this cloud technology requires to have accessibility to internet. And then we said these students, they can learn whenever they want, so they choose whenever they will be available to learn. And then among the teachers, because on our application form, the teachers also specify when they will be able to teach. And then, for example, the kids who want to learn in the evening hours, they choose the hours that fits their needs. Then we look at the teachers we have, those who will be available during that time. And the advantage of this, students have access to records. Every learning they have with the teacher, because it's interactive, whereby they ask questions, they look at the board, even this response to the question about the TVET schools, whereby on our platform, we create simulators that supports the practical learning. And then this comes as a solution to support what the government have created, including the radio lessons they provide, the TV lessons they provide. This comes as a solution to those who can be able to support the education of their kids to learn online, because some students will not be having access to the internet. We recognize that, but going forward, we think with the support of the government and the telecoms, these kids will be having access to these services from different centers, like the way Irembo service is delivered, and so on. Some of the challenges, like the director of REP said, the internet connectivity is an issue. Other challenges are some parents, it's not easy for them to understand that this technology can support their kids from their homes, but given that we are supporting the government, we think these solutions, even others, will help to find solution to these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just very quickly, Olivier, you mentioned that one of the challenges is to do with connectivity, and to try and make your app or your online platform more inclusive. What plans do you have in the pipeline? I don't know if you've started putting them into effect, but do you have any plans you'd like to share that you have in the pipeline on how to make homeschool a bit more inclusive to communities that don't have access to the internet, for instance?
Yes, we think with the internet cafe we have in the country, when they reopen, the kids who don't have gadgets in their homes, when they can spend with agreement with them, like the way they support Irembo services, Rwanda Revenue Services, we think going forward with this solution, some students will be able to join some internet cafe in their areas, and then they can connect to our services and they learn at their time. So that will be, like, for example, if they've registered for a given course, because for us we give flexibility in choosing what you study online, because for example, I might be a student in a S2 or S3, I choose that I don't understand very well physics, for example, and then I register only for physics. So the kid might have registered for that physics course, and then whenever they have missed a class, they can go in an internet cafe and access, by paying 100 francs, they can have 1 hour and review the courses that have been provided by the teachers when they were not around, because those trainings, they are recorded. Whenever a teacher is providing a lesson, all the lessons are being recorded online. So that comes as a support, and then whenever they don't understand, through our platform we have a chat system whereby they can chat with that teacher who is in charge of them, because they have a limited number of students per lessons, which they can be able to support. Because, for example, if you have around 50,000 students who connect to your lesson, they will not be able to get the support, because if all of them ask at once, you'll not be able to respond to them. I think that's the solution to that.
And just last question, very quickly, can you tell us, just give us a view and understanding of the numbers? How many teachers, how many parents are registered, how many children are registered to the app, to your online platform? Can you just give us the numbers?
We got around 50 teachers who registered to teach, but 50 the number teachers? Of students who registered to our portal, yes, 50 teachers from international schools. Even we have some from abroad. We have even students from diaspora who decided to register to support their kids because they learned many of the things from the international schools in our country. So they decided to register. We have many of them from diaspora, and then we have teachers from international schools in Rwanda who decided to support the education, to keep supporting the education. But the parents who registered their kids, the number is very small. Which we think going forward they will be able to understand that technology is the way forward, and this is an education support. Some of the persons, they ask us about whether we are creating a school online. No, we are not creating a school online, but we are supporting the schools that are already available to have their kids supported to get the education from their homes. And apart from that, we are even supporting the schools who want to have these solutions, like one of the presenter said, we are providing a solution to the international schools. So that is being even provided to the public schools which want to connect. Like now we have around 20 schools which we have connected, and the number is growing. Even the University of Kigali is joining this platform. So we are trying to support the schools even to support their kids. That's a way to reach a bigger number of students. Using the other platform we have that is called Shure ERP.
Okay. Charles, Brenna, would you like to weigh in before we go to a Twitter feed and then come back to the last question of tonight?
It's a bit of a mean thing to say, but I think COVID is good. COVID has come with its own positive things. You know, when Olivier was explaining about their platform, it tells you so much it emphasizes the importance between learning and going to school. That you don't necessarily have to go to school to learn. So I think that's a very fantastic tool. But I'm a little bit concerned about whether it is that platform or the other platforms that are being used these days. There's Shobi, there's Zoom, there's all sorts of different programs that our kids use. And then there's what Dr. Ndayambaje was referring to, the one that REB has. And I think I stand to be corrected to log in or to get onto the platform. I think it's *134#, something like that, but I stand to be corrected. My worry comes in from cheating, because back to my example of learning and going to school, if a parent is very interested in getting the child to progress, I am worried that the system, or even that *134#, what have you, has no way of detecting that it is actually the child who is answering the questions. So in terms of, if the child has to move to the next class, remember Dr. Ndayambaje just told us that they will be scoring, and they'll. So if you just want your child to score, you'll answer for them, or you'll get the teacher Bana was talking about, the neighborhood star to come and score highly for them, and they're just getting promoted and they end up not learning. So I think I'm worried about how foolproof it is. Yeah. We do not want to have a situation like we had several years ago, of where you had university graduates pouring out into the labor market and who couldn't write a paragraph of an application letter.
True.
Yeah.
I think we still have challenges around educational outcomes, and even before technology. So you can imagine when you involve technology and people have to adapt. We already know, I mean, for some students, they just go to Google and search the answers and just feed them into, but I think, again, it's an opportunity, because that is the future of education, whether we like it or not. It will take a bit of time for us to get there, but we know that technology now is changing our way of life. But the challenge, I think, for governments, and I think just this week there was a big meeting on that, is to see how to address the infrastructural challenges so that you have as many people as possible onto the platform, but especially those that cannot afford. Because there's a tendency to measure progress based on the few, the elite, which can be misleading. I think we shouldn't be looking at the numbers of the elite. We should be measuring progress based on the vulnerable homes and access,
I want to take us, because we're running out of time, I think it's important to just quickly go to the next point, and then we'll move to our social media feed. And this really next point to you, Dr. Ndayambaje, as well as to Olivier, is to do with the future of education in Rwanda. We're living in unprecedented times. Education is going to be changed for sure in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term. And it's important for us to think of critical strategies to ensure sustainable and impactful solutions to this issue. And I know, like you said, Dr. Ihine, it is a journey. It is a constant journey for everyone involved, whether it's from the ministry, whether it's from entrepreneurs like Olivier coming up with solutions, especially for children and parents. So my question to you, both of you, if you could also just briefly share, what are your thoughts on the future? On the future of education in Rwanda, to ensure that we create sustainable and reliable strategies, especially so that we can withstand future shocks, such as the coronavirus, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, because I'm sure this is just a precursor of more things to come. So what can we do in terms of education to make sure we lay solid foundations to withstand future shocks, such as the coronavirus? And I'll start with you, Dr. Ndayambaje.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. And again, I thank the panelists for their comments. What is true is that we, as a Rwanda Education Board, have learned a lot from this period, as Haba put it, right? And the next move now is that we have to go beyond teaching ICT and make sure that we emphasize on teaching through ICT, because we have been giving basic ICT literacy, but it is the right time now to invest in teaching using ICTs. How do we reach this? We need even to revise our policies, and it is even part of one of the tweets, someone asking about the computers now in the schools. So because that was the policy, that we give computers to schools, maybe in terms of establishing the smart classroom that we have in secondary schools. But you can see now, these computers are not 100% serving the purpose, though we managed to lend some of these computers to teachers. But the new move would be like, we need to make sure that we go and make sure that every teacher gets a laptop. Because now, if every teacher had a laptop and a modem, for instance, it would be very easy for us to engage even the teachers, so that the teacher become like the facilitators of what we are doing through distance. So every teacher would be now in a position actually to monitor whether his or her students have learned. So we need to make sure that we capitalize on our teachers. We facilitate our teachers to get access to their individual laptops. Another important point is that however much when time comes we are going to go back in the schools in a conventional way, we are going still to invest into remote learning so that kids continue being exposed to this new mode of learning. Because again, for our secondary education graduates, I don't think that they are going to dream again going to go to do bachelor degree and masters abroad. You can still acquire your bachelor degree, your masters at a distance without even flying abroad. So meaning that the experience we are gaining now is going definitely to continue to support the physical face-to-face learning and even becoming a new mode of learning for a future generation. That is what we have learned, and that is what we are going to capitalize on.
Just very quickly, we have a tweet that's come in, and it corresponds directly to what you're saying, Dr. Ndayabaje, with empowering teachers as much as possible. And this tweet, if you just read it very quickly, before we go to the rest of the tweets that we'd like you to answer to our guest panelists. This tweet is from Romeo, and it reads that, and I think it's from a published article in one of our local news outlets today. If we can go to this tweet from Romeo, and the tweet reads, how can teachers who cannot pass exams for ordinary teaching be able to teach online? And this was an article that came out saying 80% of candidates failed the teachers' recruitment exam. So, Dr. Ihene, would you like to respond to that, just to give us an idea of what thinking is going on at REB regarding recruiting teachers, not only just to teach students, but also to teach them remotely?
Yeah, thank you so much. Back the year 2018, we introduced actually compulsory computer test and English test for all entrant to the teaching position or the teaching profession. And gradually, as we do this, we even gave more strength on our ICT course in TTCs, and the same is being even done at University of Rwanda College of Education. What we can see now is that there is a considerable increase in ICT literacy of secondary and university graduates, but still we need to make sure that the existing challenges, like this year, the fresh intake of university graduates, they did not get the chance to have their own laptops, but we need to make sure that actually every university student has access to his or her own laptop. And again, we have to make sure that our TTCs have enough computers, and whatever we do, just like as mentioned, we go beyond teaching ICT, we emphasize on teaching learning through ICT. That is the only way actually our university and our secondary school graduates will complete their levels of education with proficient skills. Otherwise, going back to the rate of performance, that can be explained by a number of factors. The test that we conducted in July this year, we had the feedback based on the score rate. We had some candidates who had applied in more than one district, and today, according to the new teacher statute, we should actually have one candidate because when you apply in different districts and you are the same candidate, and yes, the examination is conducted nationally, it is like you cannot appear the three places at once. So you better apply in one district. Then the day of exam, you appear on one site of exam. But again, some candidates came to the exam ill-prepared. You know, an exam is an exam. You don't come to joke in front of an exam. So when it is an exam, you have to be well prepared to face the exam. So it's like some candidates, when they turn up to the exam, they come as just a fun or just something to come and test. So an exam, especially for the teaching profession, deserves to be peer reviewed. So for us, we want to make sure that we have standardized tests, but some candidates were not well prepared to face this. So it is our recommendation that even for the adverts that are out, candidates prepared better with regard to the post willing come occupy in our teaching profession.
Thank you very much. I'd like to hear, Olivier, what are your thoughts on the future of education in Rwanda, especially from your perspective as someone who's trying to fill the gap in terms of distance or remote learning or online learning caused by the coronavirus pandemic in Rwanda?
Like the doctor said, this is a journey, this is a long journey that we have to take and start now, because we are providing solutions that will help solve the challenges facing the schools. Like Haba said, I would like to respond on the worry he has. The applications we are giving schools, like these SaaS solutions, the solution as a service, we are giving schools, they provide a solution to the assessment of students, whereby students will be able to share their screen when they are performing in online exams from where they are, and even the teachers can see their face and the screen at which they are working on. So there is no worry on that. Maybe the schools that want to see what we provide, they will be able to contact us and we help them, because we've already connected the primary and second school, more than 20. We've even connected the university. So the more we go ahead and provide these technology tools for kids to start learning the technology, like the director said, this is something that is going to be there for so long. So we have to use technology at whatever costs. This is the solution. We think it will help to solve even the future pandemics that might arise, because technology is the way to go.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'd like us to go to Twitter feed, unless Charles Brenner, you have nothing more to add. And our first tweet is from Karera Rahma, who asks that I would like to hear from the DG of REB about the uptake of remote learning on the part of the students thus far. Has the attitude changed, considering our students are accustomed to in-person teaching? And also, how effective can assessment be done using the remote and e-learning systems? So, Deje, would you like to quickly answer that tweet before we go to the next one?
Yeah, I would say that we also, as even Haba mentioned earlier, we are thinking about how best we can identify who is doing what. In actual fact, register our students, and even register all our teachers. Like that, we shall at least have a strict monitoring system that is going to enable us to see what we are doing and how our beneficiaries or end users are dealing with the system. Otherwise, it is a work in progress.
Okay. We have another tweet from Teles4 responding to Bernard's intervention, who says that I think, as Namata mentioned, a number of volunteers, can be identified at the village level to meet, for instance, 15 to 20 children and then be assisted while practicing social distancing. ETC, otherwise in rural setting, remote learning is a big challenge. Dr. Ndayambaje, what do you think about this suggestion?
Yeah, that is an idea, but still we need to see whether those gatherings can not again be a means to spread COVID, because the person who is facilitating and to what extent that person has all the facilities at hand to make sure that kids' movement are controlled from the house to the place where he is or he's facilitating them. In actual fact, we are thinking around all possible solutions, but we can also borrow that idea and see how best it can be customized among other scenarios we are exploring now.
Thank you very much. We have another tweet coming in from Julian, Kaiwanda Julian, who asks, or who states that with the education sector disrupted due to COVID-19, the critical consequences may be related to health, water and nutrition, because schools are often oases of stability, and that's true. Children will not time for remote lessons. They're busy finding survival. Brenda, Charles, what do you have to say to that very quickly?
Absolutely. I think especially for the girl child,
Yes.
A girl child in a vulnerable home will be in charge of fetching water, cooking. So it's difficult. It's extremely difficult.
It is extremely difficult.
Yeah. I think it's something that we have to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Probably not directly related to that, but indirectly, I want to talk about infrastructure and incentives. I'm aware of this, and probably Dr. Irene did not get an opportunity to say it, but the government is doing a very fantastic job in terms of increasing the number of classrooms being built during this lockdown. So there's a lot of construction going on to improve the number of classrooms. Now, directly what that will mean is that we can address the issue of number of kids per classroom, exactly, which has been historically a big issue. But also what that means is from an infrastructure perspective is that Olivier was talking about access to internet cafes. And I think there's one of the tweets that talked about internet cafes not being available everywhere. But we do have the classrooms. More classrooms are being built. We should be able to maximize the use of this infrastructure that government has heavily invested in. Directly related to that is incentives. Why, if maybe Umwarimu Sacco is going to invest in laptops for every teacher who has passed the exam to teach, what incentive is there for Positivo who do made in Rwanda computers, if they still do, or any other importer of that, to be able to take those computers down to the primary schools? What incentive do the villagers who stay around Chirinda primary school have an incentive? What incentive do they have to ensure that there's internet connectivity at the school that they can invest in the way they would invest in building a bridge or a road, yes, or what have you, or even a business person, an ISP, homeschool by Olivier and his guys, they need an ISP. So what incentive would be in place for Liquid or Axiom or whoever to pull internet 30 kilometers in the village where there is a bus that goes only once a day? So I think it's something that needs to be looked at holistically, and Dr. Irene and his team need to look at all those other things that, yes, plug into enabling it. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Unfortunately, we come to the end of the show. We don't have time to read most of the social media messages we're getting. Thank you very much for bringing a lot of them in. We're definitely going to continue the conversation off air. I'd just like to very briefly, with the few little time we have left, hear from Olivier and Dr. Ndayambaje. Closing remarks on the way forward. If you can be as brief as possible, and I'll start with you, Olivier, regarding distance education, remote learning in Rwanda.
Thank you so much for this talk. We would like to ask for the government to support many of the schools we have in Rwanda, because without their support, many of the schools will not be able to deliver this online remote learning. So given that we are providers of the solutions as well, we would like to ask for funding so that we push this project of giving the solutions to the schools very faster, so that it's something that will not take longer to implement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olivier, and all the best with Homeschool, the online platform that you have created. Dr. Ndayambaje, closing remarks from you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would say that much as we can see challenges or gaps into what we are doing, at least we are pleased by what is happening now. You could imagine without remote learning what would be happening. So if schools were shut down by mid-March, if there was nothing happening, you could imagine how kids would be, or even or ourselves would not even be having this show, because there would be no remote learning. So for us, we are very thankful for our partners and the media for having actually mobilize the parents to support their kids, and we welcome any other idea and input that is meant actually to improve what we do now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and all the best with the really amazing work that the Ministry of Education and Rwanda Education Board is doing to really make learning ongoing and accessible as much as possible for children in primary and secondary schools across the country. Thank you very much to our guests. Thank you very much, Charles. Always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Same here.
Brenna, always a pleasure to have you on the show. To our guests watching, thank you for tuning in, especially to our viewers who are chiming in on Facebook, on social media, giving their thoughts and ideas. We'll definitely keep the conversation going off air. To our partners, Uzi Collections and Bourbon Coffee, thank you for partnering with us on The Square. Have a good night.